Women of Reddit share the wildest, most dirty stories. Story 1. After 19 years of marriage, I did something I never imagined I'd do. I stepped outside of my relationship. Let me explain how it all started. My husband and I had been together for decades, and like many couples, life happened. We had 2 kids, got caught up in the routines, and over time, we both stopped taking care of ourselves, physically and emotionally. Our intimacy faded into the background, and I felt invisible in my own home. About 6 years ago, I decided I couldn't keep going like that. I started running, joined a gym, and completely changed my lifestyle. I felt alive again, confident, strong. My husband was supportive, but he didn't join me on the journey. And while my body transformed, our relationship didn't. Our connection in the bedroom stayed cold and distant. At the gym, I began to get a lot of attention, especially from younger guys. I brushed it off. I didn't see myself as the type to entertain those advances. Still, the loneliness kept building, and the affection I craved just wasn't there at home. Now, here's where things took an unexpected turn. My oldest son often has his close friends over in the summer, especially to hang out by our backyard pool. Last Tuesday, 4 of them came by. As I was putting away laundry, I walked past my son's room and saw the door was slightly open. I figured no one was in there since the guys were all outside. But when I stepped in, I unexpectedly came face to face with Damien. He was in the middle of changing, and had clearly not expected anyone to walk in. I froze, and so did he, for just a moment. Damien is one of my son's closest friends, and I've watched him grow up over the years. Recently, I'd noticed he wasn't the awkward kid I remembered. He'd grown into someone confident and undeniably attractive. I had also sensed a change in how he looked at me, and maybe I even flirted back a little, without really meaning to. But this moment, this was different. I quickly apologized and tried to step back, but Damien didn't seem embarrassed. Instead, he calmly said it was his fault for not locking the door, and then he stepped closer. Really close. He reached past me and gently pushed the door shut. Suddenly we were alone. The air between us felt thick, charged. I hesitated. My heart was pounding. And then he reached out and took my hand. I didn't pull away. What followed happened fast, too fast to process. There were no words, just instinct, tension, and months, maybe years, of buried feelings I hadn't let myself acknowledge. We gave into a moment that neither of us planned, but neither of us stopped. It was intense, passionate, and over quickly. He left to join his friends by the pool like nothing had happened. Now, days later, I'm still trying to make sense of it all. Damien has been texting me, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tempted. I know how wrong it is. I know the risks. But after years of feeling neglected, the attention, the energy, it woke something inside me. I'm not proud of what I did, but I can't pretend it didn't happen. Story 2. Last Saturday night started out like any other. I arrived a little early at the bar for a meetup with my best friend. I grabbed a drink, found a quiet table, and waited. The place was buzzing, and across the bar, I noticed a slightly older couple, probably in their 60s, chatting and laughing. I caught the man stealing glances at me more than once, especially at my legs and neckline. But honestly, that wasn't anything new. Then my phone buzzed. My friend? Stuck with car trouble and not coming. So there I was, alone, already 1 drink in, and debating whether to call it a night. Just as I was about to ask for the bill, the waiter brought me another drink. "Compliments of the couple at the bar," he said. I smiled and raised my hand slightly, and a few moments later, the couple came over to join me. What started as a casual conversation turned into nearly an hour of laughs, drinks, and flirtatious energy that I hadn't felt in a long time. We were definitely tipsy, and the vibe was electric. Then the woman leaned in and said she had a little proposal for me. She said for $100 she wanted to make me feel good, while her husband watched. At first, I played it cool. I told her I wasn't sure, that it made me a bit uncomfortable. But truth be told, the idea had me curious. I wasn't used to women flirting with me so directly, or couples, for that matter. And maybe it was the tequila, or the way she gently rested her hand on my thigh, but something in me let go. I nodded. We made our way to the restroom, quietly and quickly. The door locked behind us. She sat down, and her husband stood nearby, watching. She reached for me, lifting my skirt with slow, confident hands. Her touch was warm, intimate. She looked me straight in the eyes as she leaned in closer. Let's just say things escalated. It was surreal, being touched like that in a public place, her husband silently watching, the music from the bar vibrating through the walls. I could barely catch my breath. The intensity, the spontaneity, it sent me over the edge. She whispered things to me I won't repeat here, but they made me blush. And when it was all over, she smiled, brushed the hair from my face, and slipped something into the waistband of my skirt. 2 crisp $100 bills. As I walked out of that restroom, heart racing, I couldn't believe what just happened. I don't regret it. Not one bit. I felt powerful, desired, and a little dangerous. Would I do it again? Maybe. All I know is, I'll never look at a quiet bar night the same way again. Story 3. It all started with bottomless brunch, and yes, we definitely got our money's worth. Cocktails were flowing, pizzas were flying, and laughter was nonstop. From there, we hit a string of pubs and bars, each one blurring into the next. By the time we decided to head back toward my place, we were in that perfect storm of tipsy and touchy. At the station, my son came to pick us up. Sweet of him, really. But let's just say, some of the women in the group got a little too friendly. You know how it is, get a few drinks in them, and suddenly they're acting like they're auditioning for a reality dating show. Flirty glances, cheeky comments, the whole bit. Once we got to my house in the countryside, my son wisely made his escape upstairs. The girls and I took over the living room, cracked open more wine, and kicked off our shoes. The idea of playing games came up. Harmless fun, right? Strip poker was the first suggestion, and let's be honest, nobody was exactly dressed modestly to begin with. A few of us were already halfway to scandalous. The game escalated quickly. Clothes came off, dares were thrown around, and let's just say the truths got very personal. Things got steamy fast. Strip teases, playful smacks, kisses. It was like something out of one of those late-night cable movies. Eventually, someone brought out the old twister mat. But let's be real, it turned into more of a group cuddle pile than an actual game. Limbs everywhere, giggles echoing through the house, and plenty of accidental touches. I stayed out of the twisty chaos at first, spinning the dial like I was running a risque roulette wheel. But I couldn't resist for long. I disappeared for a moment, then made a dramatic re-entrance wearing nothing but a beige trench coat. The girls looked at me like I was crazy, until I threw it open to reveal. Well, let's just say I came prepared with a little surprise. Their reaction? Screams, cheers, and a rush of hands and lips. I felt like the star of the show. One by one, the night went on in a blur of laughter, wild energy, and uninhibited fun. Eventually, I handed off the spotlight, along with my little accessory, and got to enjoy the ride in a new way. Let's just say I had no complaints. We all eventually collapsed in a happy, tangled heap on the living room floor, wrapped in blankets and big smiles. That night, it was unforgettable. Story 4. My neighbors Jenny and Dave are some of my husbands and my closest friends. Jenny pops over a few nights a week for wine on the deck, and we talk about everything: life, relationships, neighborhood gossip. So when she told me about a big 4th of July weekend pool party, hosted by the new couple down the street, Marley and Mike, I figured I'd stop by, especially since my husband was out of town visiting his parents. I arrived at the party around 4 in the afternoon. It was warm, over 90 degrees, and the backyard was buzzing with familiar faces and a few new ones. Jenny and Dave were there, of course, and I mingled, had some snacks, a couple of drinks, and eventually changed into my swimsuit to cool off in the pool. As the evening went on, the crowd thinned out, and it eventually came down to just a handful of us. Jenny and Dave, Marley and Mike, and 2 of Mike's younger co-workers, Justin and Ryan, both in their early 20s and definitely the most celebratory of the group. At one point, I stepped inside to use the bathroom, and when I came back, I was greeted with the chaos of Ryan chasing Justin around the pool, trying to get his swim trunks back. It was hilarious, and honestly, the carefree, slightly wild energy of the group was contagious. Back in the water, things started to shift. Marley and Mike found their corner and got a little cozy. Jenny and Dave weren't exactly subtle with their affection either. It was like everyone had silently agreed that this party was heading in a looser direction. I stayed near the steps, watching, sipping my drink, when Justin and Ryan slid into the water on either side of me. Ryan, still very much undressed, seemed to have given up on dignity and was laughing it off. Justin offered to rub my shoulders, and after a long day, I figured why not. It felt innocent enough. His hands were warm, firm, and honestly, really good. As he worked out the tension in my back, he kept adjusting my swimsuit straps, and eventually, I let them fall to make it easier for him. The wine, the heat, the laughter, the atmosphere, it all started to blur in the best way. I noticed Marley's bikini top floating past, and when I looked up, She was completely topless, still wrapped around Mike. Jenny was now facing Dave, and there was no mistaking what was going on between them either. Meanwhile, Justin's hands had drifted slightly lower, his touch more deliberate. I closed my eyes and let myself relax into the moment, leaning back against him. That's when I realized how far we'd all gone. I opened my eyes, and Ryan was still next to me, watching. I felt exposed. Not just physically, but emotionally. These people knew I was married. And yet, I didn't stop it. I couldn't. I felt desired, swept up, overwhelmed by the energy of it all. Things escalated quickly. I won't go into detail, but let's just say that lines were crossed, and not just by me. Everyone was involved. Every couple, every person. It was like something out of a movie, one of those you'd never admit to watching, but can't look away from. When Jenny finally noticed what was happening with me, she shouted my name in shock. That was the moment it hit me. The haze lifted. I was in the middle of something I couldn't take back. Later, Jenny pulled me aside, asking what I was thinking. What about my husband? I didn't have an answer. I just stood there, stunned, the weight of everything settling in. Eventually, we all agreed, without really saying it, that this night would be forgotten. No one wanted to carry it forward. We sat for a while longer, the mood quiet, the sky now dark. Then everyone got dressed and left. I haven't told my husband. I don't know if I ever will. All I know is that something changed that night. In me, in how I see my neighbors, in how I see myself. And I'm still trying to figure out what to do with that. Story 5. This past weekend, I was out shopping with a few close friends, and the heat was intense. You know that kind of heat that makes you sweat through your clothes in minutes? Yeah, that. So one of us threw out the idea, why not head to the lake nearby and cool off? It was totally spontaneous. None of us had planned for it. No swimwear, no towels, nothing. I was just in my usual summer outfit, shorts and a button-up top. Stylish, but not exactly lake day material. Still, once we got there, the view was stunning. The water sparkled, the trees gave just enough shade, and it felt like the kind of place you don't just turn around and leave. We debated heading home, but then one of the girls shrugged and said, "Let's just make the best of it." That kind of set the tone. One friend stayed fully dressed, another two stripped down to their bras and panties. But here's the thing. I wasn't wearing a bra. Oops. Now, I've never been shy. I like a little thrill now and then. And the idea of being out in the sun and ending up with weird tan lines just didn't sit right with me. So I said, screw it. Shorts came off, just my CK thong underneath, and then the shirt followed. And there I was, completely freed from any tan line restrictions. It felt exhilarating. We laid out some spare blankets from the trunk and set up a little spot to sunbathe. At first, I laid on my stomach, letting the sun warm my back, hair up, sunglasses on. But eventually, I had to flip over. That's when it really hit me. I was just out there, topless. Not hiding, not covering, just soaking in the sun. The lake wasn't packed, but there were definitely people around. I noticed a few sneaky glances and some double takes. Instead of freaking out, I felt something else. I liked it. There was something oddly freeing about it all. The breeze on my skin, the warmth of the sun, the attention, it gave me a quiet kind of confidence I didn't expect. I wasn't trying to be the center of attention, but I didn't mind it either. That day stirred something in me. I think I might enjoy the art of showing off, just a little. Not for anyone else, but because it makes me feel good. Story 6. Years ago, I cared for a young patient. He was 19, and battling a terminal illness. He was quiet, kind, and carried a strength that left a lasting impression on me. As we got to know each other, he confided in me one day with something deeply personal. Something he had never experienced, and didn't think he ever would. He told me he just wanted to feel closeness. Real intimacy. To know what it was like to be held, to be touched, to feel desired, just once before his time ran out. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. It wasn't something they cover in any training manual. But I thought about it long and hard. And eventually I spoke to his mother, carefully, respectfully. Surprisingly, she understood. She knew what her son was missing, and she gave me her blessing to do what I thought was right. The next day, I told him I had something in mind, and I asked for his permission first and foremost. His eyes lit up in a way I hadn't seen before. He was nervous, but grateful. And so was I. Because of his condition, he couldn't move much, so I guided everything, slowly and gently. There was no rush. Just quiet closeness. I held him, made him feel safe, and stayed present in every moment. We didn't kiss, but I rested my forehead near his and kept my hand on his face. That connection, it wasn't just physical. It was human. It was soul deep. He smiled afterward and asked if we could share that moment again the next day. And we did. Over time, he became more comfortable, more open. He would often admire my body, especially my chest, and I allowed him those moments of closeness that he craved. It wasn't about lust, it was about comfort, about feeling alive, even briefly. As the days passed, his condition worsened. Eventually, he had to be moved to the hospital. I visited him as often as I could. On one of my last visits, he held my hand and placed it gently on his chest. Our eyes met. He gave me that smile, soft, peaceful, and full of gratitude, before he closed his eyes for the last time. I knew our final moment together would be our last. That final time we shared, I cried quietly, because I could feel the weight of goodbye in every breath. My husband, wonderful and compassionate, knew everything. He supported me through it all, understanding why I did what I did. It took me a long time to work through the grief, not just of losing someone, but of sharing something so profound and then having to let it go. To me, it was never just about intimacy. It was about love in its purest, most human form. A connection that went beyond bodies, beyond time. And I know he felt that, too. Story 7. I'll be honest, I was young, bored, and craving something I couldn't get at the time. My husband was deployed, I was freshly 18, and stuck in this weird limbo between missing him and wanting to feel something again. I was restless, curious, and maybe a little reckless. One day, I was driving by a roadside rest stop near the edge of town. It was one of those places tucked between a truck stop and a wooded park. I'd stopped there once before and noticed something strange, something that didn't seem accidental. Let's just say, it looked like a setup for people who wanted attention anonymously. I couldn't stop thinking about it. I started finding excuses to drive that way. Just to see. Just to imagine. The idea of doing something no one could trace back to me had me spinning. After a few weeks of circling the idea and the parking lot, I gave in. I parked, heart pounding, and walked into the restroom. I was alone at first. Only a few minutes passed before I heard someone enter. A light knock on the wall. I said a soft hello, and without another word, something slid through the opening in the wall. I froze. It wasn't what I expected, and I was shaking. But curiosity won. I reached out, my hands doing the exploring. Then I heard a voice, low, urging me to take it further. I hesitated, but eventually leaned in and gave in to the moment. It happened fast. No names. No faces. Just sensation and adrenaline. He left without a word, and before I could even catch my breath, someone else stepped in. And then another. There was no time to think. No time to process. I just kept going, one after another, until I physically couldn't anymore. My knees were sore, my jaw ached, and I could hear quiet voices outside, some waiting, some whispering about what was happening inside. I didn't want to face them. I didn't want to walk past knowing what we'd all just shared, but I wasn't ready to stop either. So I shifted, changed my position, let them come to me in a different way. It all blurred together after that. The time, the number of people, it stopped mattering. I was completely caught up in the experience, in the freedom of being anonymous, in doing something I never thought I would. I stayed for hours. Eventually I left, quietly, carefully, and with a strange mix of emotions. Part of me felt overwhelmed. Part of me felt alive. And another part of me didn't regret it. Not because it was perfect. Not because it was safe. But because it was mine. My choice. My moment. And I'll never forget it. Story 8. It had only been a few days since the party, but I couldn't stop thinking about him. The way he looked up at me, the way he responded when I took charge. I kept replaying it in my head, over and over. And this time, I wanted to see just how far he'd let me go. After dark, I sent him a message. Your turn. Be ready at the back door after midnight. His reply? Just 2 words. Come over. I slipped through the side gate, and he met me quietly. No smug grin this time. Just wide eyes and a heartbeat I could practically hear pulsing through the air. He led me inside without a word, like he was in a daze, glancing back at me like he wasn't sure if this was real. The second we reached his room and the door clicked shut, I made my move. I pushed him down, climbed on top, and let the tension snap. With one hand in his hair and the other tugging fabric aside, I settled onto him, right where I knew he wanted me most. He didn't hesitate. His mouth opened like it was made for this. His hands gripped my thighs, and in seconds he was completely lost in me, devoted, hungry, and giving absolutely everything he had. I moved with purpose, slow at first, then deeper, more demanding. I didn't hold back, I let him feel the weight of me. I had to bite into my own arm just to stay grounded. When I finally rolled off of him, his face said it all. He was wrecked, in the best way. Lips glossy, eyes glazed, and not a single word spoken. Just awe. I leaned in close, whispered into his ear with a smile. Good boy. Next time, I'm not letting you breathe. And with that, I slipped out into the night, heart racing, legs trembling, and already thinking about round 2. Story 9. It all started as a joke, honestly. We were out one night, drinks flowing, everyone in a great mood, and in the middle of the laughter, I leaned in and kissed my best friend's husband. It was playful, harmless, or so I thought. But after that night, something shifted. Every time we ran into each other, he'd bring it up. Casually at first, just teasing. Then a little more often. A little more seriously. One day, I finally asked him why he kept mentioning it. His answer? I can't stop thinking about it. Weeks later, I dropped by their place to pick up keys. I had offered to watch their dogs while they were out of town. I barely stepped through the door before he kissed me again. But this time, it wasn't a joke. It felt charged. Intentional. And I won't lie, the way he did it, I melted. What happened next happened fast. Let's just say we didn't stay in the hallway. And the bed I made sure to fluff for their return. Yeah, we didn't leave it quite the same. After that, things just continued. Every few weeks, we'd find a reason. A quiet moment. A quick meetup. It became our little secret, a thrilling one. That is, until he invited me to a hotel one night and brought someone with him. His best friend, who also happened to be married to another one of my close friends. I was stunned for about 2 seconds, then curious, then very, very into it. That night turned into one I'll never forget. And to be honest, it opened a door I didn't expect. One thing led to another, and somehow, I became the go-to girl for more than just casual conversation in our circle. It sounds wild, I know. Maybe even wrong. But here's the truth, I don't feel guilty. Not in the way I probably should. They're all gorgeous. The connection is addictive. And every time I think it might be the last time, it isn't. So yeah, call it messy, call it complicated. But I'm not ready for it to be over. Story 10. So just a heads up, I literally just turned 18 2 weeks ago. Happy birthday to me, right? Party popper. Anyway, here's the situation. My boyfriend recently left for a 2-week holiday with his parents, which means, yeah, I've been climbing the walls a bit. Let's just say the timing of his trip and my birthday energy didn't line up very well. But this story actually happened the day before he left. Monday afternoon. I went over to his place to hang out, say goodbye, and soak up a little quality time before he vanished off the grid. Everything was normal until I got up to use the bathroom. As I was walking down the hall, someone stepped out of the bathroom, dripping wet, fresh from the shower, and wearing nothing but a towel. It was his brother. Now, I'd heard about him before. He lives on his own, super smart, quiet type, but this was the first time I actually saw him in person. And let me tell you, he's the kind of guy that makes you stop mid-step. Tall, tatted, jawline for days, with the whole mysterious older guy with a doctorate thing going on. And the way that towel was just barely holding on. Yeah, my brain short-circuited. He nodded politely and walked past like it was nothing. Meanwhile, I was internally screaming. I made it to the bathroom and, yeah, I'll be honest, my imagination didn't exactly give me a break. I tried to shake it off, but let's just say I had to deal with the situation right then and there. Quietly. Quickly. And the worst or best part, my boyfriend was waiting for me in the next room the whole time. That somehow made it even more intense. Anyway, I composed myself, walked out like nothing ever happened, and acted innocent for the rest of the night. So yeah, that happened. Thanks for sticking around till the end. And please, don't make me any more flustered than I already am. Story 11. So my cousin's getting married in a couple of months, and like any girl with an excuse to dress up, I went on a little online shopping spree. A few dress options arrived last week, and I couldn't wait to try them on. The timing? Let's just say it was interesting. My husband had a friend visiting, and they were both hanging out in the living room when the delivery showed up. Still, I was too excited to wait. I grabbed the package and rushed off to try on the first dress. As soon as I had it on, I walked back out to show my husband, twirling a little, asking for opinions. His friend sat nearby, trying to act casual. I explained I'd probably wear the dress without a bra, even though I had one on at the time. My husband smirked and suggested I test the fit without it. I started to head back to the bedroom when he casually said, "You could just take it off here." I paused, glanced at his friend. then back at my husband, who looked way too pleased with himself. Now, I could have slipped it off without showing anything. But I knew exactly what he was doing, and honestly, I was in the mood to play along. I slid the straps down and slowly worked the dress forward, just enough to remove the bra. For a few seconds, yeah, I was definitely more exposed than necessary. But I pulled the dress back up and pretended nothing happened. We talked for a bit about the dress, and then my husband asked me to bring the other two into the living room, so I could try them on there too. So I grabbed them and came back. Right there, I slipped out of the first dress and into the second, again, giving them both a pretty clear view in the process. The vibe was teasing, playful, and very charged. As we talked about this new dress, my husband asked whether I'd wear anything underneath it. I said I probably would. He raised an eyebrow and suggested trying it without. So, I let my underwear slide down and stepped out of them, his friend's eyes definitely following the motion. The second dress was my favorite, then and now, but we still had one more to go. So I slipped it off, completely bare for a moment, and stepped into the last one. It was shorter than the others, and as I walked around, I mentioned that it felt a little riskier. My husband asked me to pull the hem up a bit, just to see. So I did, and let's just say, it left nothing to the imagination. Eventually, I decided I wanted to try the second one again, but it was across the room. So naturally, I took off the last dress and walked over without bothering to cover up. I could feel both pairs of eyes on me the whole way. I slipped back into my favorite dress and gave it another spin, then flopped down on the couch, right next to my husband's friend. My husband asked how it felt while sitting. I told him it covered just fine, even without anything underneath. And just to prove it, I lifted the hem again, like it was no big deal. We kept chatting about the dresses, but the air in the room was definitely different now. Let's just say, I don't think anyone cared much about the wedding after that. Story 12. I went to a D1 college to chase my dream of playing volleyball at a high level. I trained hard, really hard, but sophomore year, I still couldn't break into the starting lineup. So I decided to get some extra help and hired a personal trainer to work on my strength and leg power. That's how I met Ollie. She was 26, a former D1 athlete herself, and specialized in training young women. Strong, confident, curvy in all the right ways, and with squat form that could make anyone stop and stare. She knew what she was doing, and she took my progress seriously. We trained together 4 times a week. She built out my nutrition plans, tracked my progress, and held me accountable. And it worked. I ended up starting both my junior and senior seasons. Honestly, I owed a lot of that to her. Now, when I first started training with Ollie, I was 20. My boyfriend at the time wasn't thrilled about it. He said she was too flirty, too touchy. He even suggested she might be into me. I brushed it off. She was older, professional, and I figured he was just being insecure. I was paying Ollie $100 a week, less than what she normally charged, planning to square up everything with my living stipend in June. But then my car broke down in May, and most of that money went toward replacing it. By the start of summer, I owed her nearly $5,000. When I told her I couldn't pay right away, she was understanding, but firm. She said she couldn't keep training me without settling the balance. I had no job, no backup plan, and I was out of options. That's when she made an offer. She said if I spent the weekend with her at her family's lake house, just the two of us, she'd clear the whole debt. No pressure, no threats. Just an invitation. I hesitated for like 2 seconds. I had a feeling she'd try something, sure. But I didn't expect things to escalate like they did. The lake house was small, quiet, and kind of charming, 2 bedrooms 5 minutes from the actual lake, which, by the way, I never saw. Within minutes of walking through the door, Ollie made her move, hands on my waist, a kiss that didn't leave much room for misinterpretation. And from that point on, the weekend kind of blurred together. We spent most of the first night in the downstairs bedroom. Things got intense fast. It was all-consuming, touch, energy, tension that had clearly been building for months. She was bold, experienced, and didn't hold anything back. We ordered food, drank, and between bites and sips, she'd lean in close and pick up where she left off. Around midnight, we both took something to keep us awake, and things only got wilder from there. The next day, more of the same. We made a quick grocery run, then spent nearly the entire day inside, wrapped up in each other. There were breaks, sure, but they didn't last long. That night, we went into town for dinner. At one point, she climbed into my lap and kissed me in front of everyone. I was too caught up to care. Sunday rolled around, and she dropped me off at my dorm. But before she left, One last goodbye that lasted a little longer than expected. After that, we never spoke again. I didn't tell my boyfriend. I didn't label the experience. I didn't unpack it with a therapist. I just filed it away. It didn't make me question who I was. But it definitely left me with memories I still don't quite know how to process. Story 13. I went to a Division I college to chase my dream of playing volleyball. I trained relentlessly, pushing myself through early mornings and late nights. But by sophomore year, I was still stuck on the bench. So I got help. That's when I met Ollie. She was 26, a former D1 athlete herself, and she specialized in strength training for women. She was strong, confident, and completely unbothered by anyone's opinion. Her body looked like it had been sculpted by squats and grit, and her coaching style was just as firm. Ollie trained me 4 times a week. She tracked everything, my strength gains, inches lost, macros, and mindset. She even wrote up a new nutrition plan every 2 weeks. Her discipline started rubbing off on me, and by junior year, I finally broke into the starting lineup. Senior year, I stayed there. A lot of that success I owe to her. Now, when I first started with her, I was 20. My boyfriend at the time wasn't thrilled. He constantly made comments, said she was a little too physical, a little too invested, maybe even a little too interested. I shrugged it off. She was older, professional, and laser-focused on results. I paid her $100 a week, even though her services were worth more. She let me defer the rest until summer, and I planned to use my living stipend in June to square up. But then life happened. My car broke down in May. I had to use that money to get it replaced. And when June rolled around, I found myself staring down a $4,800 tab. When I told Ollie, she was calm, but clear. She said she couldn't keep working with me unless the balance was taken care of soon. Then she said something I didn't expect. If you spend the weekend with me at my family's lake house, we'll call it even. No pressure. No demands. Just an offer. I paused for maybe 2 seconds. I had a hunch there was more to the invitation than sunbathing and card games, but I went anyway. The place was quiet, cozy, and secluded, 2 bedrooms, lots of trees, and ironically, I never even saw the lake. From the moment we walked in, the energy shifted. She didn't waste time. Her hands found my waist, and a kiss followed that didn't leave much room for guessing. The rest of that afternoon felt like something out of a dream, or maybe a scene I wasn't sure I was ready to admit I wanted. We stayed in that bedroom for hours. There was something about her, an intensity, a focus, that mirrored how she trained me. Only this time, it wasn't about weights and reps. That night, we ordered food, cracked open a few beers, and drifted between laughter, teasing, and long silences that said more than words ever could. By midnight, the mood had deepened. We stayed up, wide awake, exploring a tension that had clearly been building for months. The next day was more of the same. A quick grocery run, then right back to the same rhythm, lazy hours, lingering glances, and moments that blurred the line between curiosity and craving. That evening we went into town for dinner. At one point, she pulled me into her lap and kissed me like no one was watching, even though everyone was. Sunday came too quickly. She drove me back to my dorm, walked me inside, and before she left, there was one last moment between us, soft, slow, and final. After that, nothing. No texts. No calls. No check-ins. I never told my boyfriend. I didn't unpack the weekend with a therapist. I didn't even try to understand what it meant. I just tucked it away in the part of my brain where I keep the memories that don't fit into neat little boxes. It didn't make me question who I was. But it did make me realize that sometimes, the most unexpected experiences leave the deepest marks.